Missed this. No, I'm not. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your interest. Thank you for being here today. It's been a big day. So I don't have anything prepared to begin, so let's just go to questions. And I think there's a whole new world here. I think someone's going to actually call the questions for me instead of me pointing at people. So
we'll start with name and outlet.
Oh, and we are live streaming, so we'll use the microphones, please.
Hi, Graham Thompson at the Star. Were you surprised by the results? You got a huge number of votes. Did that surprise you? And just how little your opponents got?
Well, you know, they also did great, right? When you look at historic leadership races, thousands and thousands of votes throughout the province for the wonderful people on stage. Awesome. I will admit to you that I often thought over the last week or so that the data that we were collecting was that 20th poll out of 20, the one outside of the confidence interval. I wasn't sure that I believed those numbers. And I will also tell you that I came in last in the over-under that we tried just before we got the results. So, but I am, of course, blown away by this level of support from people from across the province. And the fact that they're putting in me, again, even just for a second, their hopes and their dreams for their community. And for me, that's a really humbling thing, and it's something I'll try to live up to every day.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry, jumping ahead, you have no seat. How important is it now for you to get a seat? The thing is,
I feel like you asked me that question on the first day of the campaign as well.
Okay, so
but
it's still a question.
Yeah. No, I'm not that worried about it. Most citizens don't know that the Alberta legislature actually doesn't meet very often. They don't sit very long. And I actually really believe that it's going to be extremely important for the NDP caucus to be much more out in the community, in communities, in every corner of the province. So I will continue to lead as best I can, and if there's an opportunity to take a seat in the legislature through a by-election, I'm happy to do it, but I'm in no rush at all.
Okay, we'll go to Rick.
Rick Bell, Post Media. Congratulations.
Thanks, Rick.
What is your message to Daniel Smith and the UCP, since it wasn't so long ago they said they would be salivating over the prospect of facing you? So what is your message to them today?
If they're salivating, they might want to drink some water. Albertans have spoken. Albertans have spoken today in massive, massive numbers. That voter turnout percentage, the highest anyone's ever heard of in a leadership race, shows that these Albertans didn't join the party so they could cast a ballot. They joined the party so that they could build a better Alberta. And, you know, much has been made of the ability of this version of the Conservative movement, the UCP, to be able to organize. And what we saw today is that the Alberta NDP has massively out-organized them. And this is something that I suspect will continue as we build this movement. Because you can't build a movement, as the UCP has done, that is only focused on power. You have to build a movement that's focused on the kind of province you want to build. And I think Albertans have spoken in large numbers about the fact that they want a better and more welcoming Alberta, an Alberta with pragmatic and smart and thoughtful government, and they just don't have it now.
And just as a supplementary, it'll come as no surprise to you that I'm sure they're going to come out strongly against you right off.
I haven't been on social media yet. I wonder what they've said already.
Exactly, but I think that it's obvious they're going to come out strongly against you right off the top. What do you see as the next 3 years of this battle to be?
I mean, look, I've never been in opposition before. So I make no bones about the fact that I've got a lot to learn. The good news is I've got this incredible 38-member caucus who do know what they're doing, who I will be leaning on a lot in the conversations that we have. But you know what? Only for you, Rick, only for you. Okay, we can talk a little bit politically, because I'm also a bit of a political nerd. So, of course, they're going to come out and try and define me in their terms. Oh, let them try. I have a record of 11 years that defines me very, very well. And I think if they find that they will try to define in their own terms, they will find just how out of touch they are with Albertans.
Alana Smith, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Lana.
Long time. I feel like last time we talked was when I was at the Calgary Herald. So
it was a long
both
time.
moving
Thank you for the
different
great
spots.
work you've been doing.
Thank you. Question for you about the seat again. What about Lethbridge now that Shannon Phillips is stepping down?
You know, I'm really happy to keep my mind open on the conversation about Lethbridge. I really want to talk with the local organizers there and really understand what the lay of the land is there. Because I'll be honest, I don't know that city very well. And I think that every constituency in the province deserves an MLA that is present, deserves an MLA that speaks for their best interests going forward. I don't want to be like the Premier. I don't want to represent a constituency I show up to once or twice a year. In fact, I was in her constituency a few days ago speaking to a packed room, and someone was complaining to me about some cuts that the education system there has faced, and I jokingly said, but your MLA is the Premier. And the person who was asking the question said, to quote Mean Girls, she doesn't even go here. And that's not the kind of MLA I would ever want to be. So I want to ensure that we're doing right by the people of Lethbridge as we're doing right by the people of Alberta, but I'm happy to have the conversation.
And I also want to ask you about party unity. Obviously, there are tens of thousands of new members with the NDP. How do you plan to bridge the gap between those are, you know, traditional NDPers and those really much closer to center, much like you have been?
I think that today's Alberta NDP already represents the median Albertan. And I just think more Albertans need to see that and hear that. Rachel last night mentioned something, and I haven't seen the stats myself, but that a lot of the folks who have now been members who are now members have already been casual supporters of the party. And now they've taken the next step to really join the movement. And so one of the big jobs that we'll have going forward is to really understand who our members are, to understand who they aren't, to understand where we still have work to do over the next little while. But one of the most interesting things for me is typically after a leadership race, the numbers drop off very quickly. But you also have a very low voter turnout. So given that our voter turnout was higher than the voter turnout in the provincial election, that says to me these people are in it for the long haul. So my number one goal is to make sure that their membership is worth it to them and that we grow the membership rather than let it decline.
Mr. Nenshi, what about caucus leadership? The Christina Gray and I think David Agan have sort of seen the party through this. Are you going to be installing people who supported you as caucus leaders? Because every leader needs that. They're pretty hard for them to rebel against you with that vote, but no, you know.
I'm so tempted, Don, just to say stay tuned, but that's not very nice, is it? So I'll say to you that the caucus leadership, let me just, sorry, it is very hot. So let me just say that the caucus leadership have been extraordinary. I've never seen a House leader like Christina Gray, for example. And the rest of them have really done a great job in a very difficult time for the caucus, having to go through an entire spring sitting in the middle of a leadership race. And so I'm not actually at all worried about caucus unity. Unlike the other party that has a U in their name and is not in any way united, this party is very, very united, and the level of talent on those benches, from the folks who really know what they're doing because they've been around the block, like Christina Gray or David Eggen, to the brand new MLAs who bring such a wealth of experience from across the province. I am blown away by how great they are. And look, in about 7 days' time, maybe 9 days' time, we will be sitting down at a caucus retreat and we'll be talking about how to build this team and move it forward as well.
That's okay, thanks.
Jason next.
Hey, Jason Markusoff, CBC. How does the phrase official opposition leader Naheed Nenshi rattle around in your brain?
I hadn't really heard it until right now. So you're getting a very raw answer. You know, I've never been anyone who defined myself by my title, but what I've been able to do is define myself by the opportunity in front of me, the opportunity to serve. And, you know, not being the mayor anymore, I thought it would be hard, not having people call me your worship anymore. It wasn't hard at all, because I was able to slip into just a new role in trying to help community and build community. And this is a new role. It's a different role. But just for fun, only for you, Jason, one of the very interesting things about this is actually whether I have that title. Because I don't have a seat in the legislature, there's actually an official definition of the title. So I might not actually have it. That's a question to be answered.
My follow-up is, how fast do you intend to move on the federal disaffiliation question? There would be the next opportunity to do it would be at the fall convention. Do you intend to move that quickly on putting a question to members or later on?
So my understanding is, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is that there is not actually a full membership convention in the fall. That's in the spring. But in the fall, there will be what they call a provincial council meeting. You know me, I don't wait on things. But really the issue on this one for me is simply that the members are really talking about it. I hear it every day. And the way I like to lead is I don't like things that are bubbling under the surface. I like to surface them. And so I'd like to surface that conversation with the members as soon as possible. I certainly have an opinion on the matter, but ultimately it is the choice of the members on what they want to do, and there's no point in dilly-dallying about it. There really is. I've promised that I will put in a transparent process for the members to make the decision once and for all, and we may as well start moving on that process, but I can't tell you today how long that process will take.
Next from Michael from Global.
How do you, because this is shaping up to be a 2-year, 3-year election cycle.
3.5 probably.
Leading up to the next one. How do you ensure that Albertans are not going to become fatigued with what's going to be a lot of back and forth between you and the Premier?
Oh, look, no one can ever get tired of me. I am endlessly fascinating to myself and to Rick Bell.
Thank you.
Rent-free head. But it's the most affordable housing in Alberta right now. All of that said, I just like to make Jason Markusoff crack up. See, I missed this. Okay, back to actually your question. Like I said, I really haven't been in opposition before. And obviously part of being in opposition is we need to call out the government. We need to call them out when they do unethical, immoral, incompetent things. But I also don't want the whole world to be about yelling at the provincial government all the time. I think what we need to do is help Albertans come to an understanding of what it is they want, what it is they need from the province, understanding that the province that has been built over so many years is not really represented by this version of the Conservative movement. This is not Peter Lougheed's Conservatives. It's not even Ralph Klein's Conservatives. And so part of the conversation for me, I actually see the next 3 years as a gift, as an opportunity to really take that time with Albertans in coffee shops and at kitchen tables, in every corner of the province, to really better understand who and what they are. You know, as an example, we often talk about Calgary, Edmonton, and rural Alberta. And I've always sort of rebelled against that because There's lots of different ways to live outside of Calgary and Edmonton. You know, I think that folks, someone who works at the hospital in Red Deer doesn't think of herself as a rural Albertan. Even an oil patch worker in Fort McMurray probably doesn't immediately identify as a rural Albertan. And so I see these 3 years as a real opportunity for Albertans to get to know me better and for the party to get to know Albertans better as well.
Do you have a follow-up?
Following up on
Thank you. I will take it. Thank you.
Following up on Jason's in terms of the NDP and the ties with the federal, you said that you've had conversations with people here in Alberta about those ties. Have you had conversations with federal NDP leadership about what those changes could look like?
Well, of course, because I've been around the scene for so long, I know Mr. Singh very well. I know a lot of his caucus members very well. But no, we haven't had any political conversations. But I did speak to some of the more party staff folks. And what I said to them was very straightforward, which is no matter what the members decide, we're going to do so and move forward in a way that is about mutual admiration, mutual respect, and mutual trust. And that is really always my goal.
Next we'll go to Kelly.
Hi.
Hi.
Congratulations. Rachel Notley has talked a lot about pragmatism in prairie NDP movements.
Yes.
How do you that, given that we're seeing a wave of conservative politics sweep the country nationally, that conservatives are on the ascendancy, what does pragmatism look like to you?
I'm not sure that I agree entirely with the last bit of the premise of your statement, because I look to the recent election in Manitoba, for example, where we saw a kind of a distillation of the UCP philosophy in a very divisive, hateful, some would even say racist campaign by the Conservative Party up against Wab Kinew's campaign of hope and optimism. Now, he didn't win big, but he won. And the response that we've seen from the people of Manitoba since then has been that they're aching for this. They're hungry for this kind of politics that inspires us to be bigger than we are. So when I first jumped into this race, look, I was scared. I was scared that my kind of politics, the politics of talking to people, of inspiring people to be bigger than themselves, was completely out of style. And I thought that's just not going to work anymore. And we learned very quickly, we learned in the first week in a standing room only room in Red Deer, that people are aching for a bigger politics, that they're tired of this kind of populism that inspires them, as I said today, that inspires them to think small. And so I believe that we can tap into that vein. I believe that we're at the beginning of a movement. It feels a little bit like the late stages of the 2010 mayoral campaign to me. You were there, you know, where we were really tapping into this movement. And I think that the Albertans and citizens are much, much smarter than our politicians give them credit for. And it's time for us to appeal to that.
Yes, and just to be clear, it sounds like you're not in a rush to get a seat in the legislature. You're talking about 3 years of talking to Albertans. And do you commit to running in Calgary, which is your home and your base?
Yeah, look, I would love to. You know, depending on how the by-election situation works, I'm not saying I'll never get into the legislature. I believe Danielle Smith herself, you guys would know better than me, but I believe Danielle Smith herself was out of the legislature for 3 years when she was the leader of the opposition. That the number could be wrong, but it was a while. Do you remember? Oh, she was Wild Rose leader. I apologize. Thank you, Graham. But yeah, so it took her a while. And so, you know, if there's a by-election that makes sense, if there are communities that I can turn to and say, you know, lend me your seat for a while, then I'm happy to consider that. In the long run, in the general election, I am a Calgarian, and I would love to be able to run and represent my city as well. You know, unlike the current premier who ran in a riding of convenience, I also want to be a great MLA for my riding.
Okay, we'll go to Alex next.
Hi, you mentioned some of your conversations with the federal NDP officials, but wondering if you can speak to how you see your relationship with Jagmeet Singh specifically going forward.
I'm making a pile. So because of who I am, I have great relationships with leaders of all of the federal parties. And you know, for me, I always remind people that while I was mayor, I had Prime Minister Harper for the first half and Prime Minister Trudeau for the second half. And we actually negotiated more infrastructure funding for Calgary than any other city in Canada under both of those regimes. Something that, by the way, is now illegal in Alberta. under Bill 18. And so one thing I've always prided myself on is being able to have good relationships with everyone. Certainly, I've had a lot of conversations with Mr. Singh around pipelines and energy and some of my concerns with his policies. And we'll continue to have those respectful conversations going forward as well. But you know, I'll say one thing though. I'll say one other thing, which I should be more clear about. Our government's intransigence on things like the pharmacare and childcare and dental care in this province hurts Albertans. And I will very happily make a deal with anybody if that deal helps Albertans. I'll make deals on clean electricity regulations that make sense for Alberta. I'll make deals on federal transfers and on social programs. And that's what this government refuses to do. They just pick fights instead of making deals. And I'm happy to make a deal with anybody, Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau included.
Just to follow up, did you guys get a chance to talk at all when he was in town this weekend?
No, I did not.
Next, we'll go to Radio Canada.
Yeah.
Sure.
Marc-Antoine Blanc, Radio-Canada. Well, first of all, congrats.
Thank you.
And I hope you're ready because I'm going to make you repeat in French. Alors,
Je peux le faire.
ma première question, c'est quoi la prochaine étape, en fait? Est-ce que c'est de vous faire élire dans une circonscription?
Il y a beaucoup de travail à faire. J'ai cru peut-être après cette campagne si longue, je peux me reposer un petit peu. Mais ce n'est pas possible parce que nous avons un gouvernement maintenant qui est très difficile pour la majorité des Albertains. Et donc, c'est très important de commencer le travail avec les membres, avec les citoyens, avec les Albertains, le travail de bâtir un mieux Alberta, de bâtir une maison pour tous.
Est-ce que vous avez des conversations avec d'autres députés, en fait, au sein du caucus pour peut-être vous laisser la place pour vous faire élire?
Non, non, pas encore. Pour moi, c'est très important, pour moi, and I'll repeat this one in English as well because I think it's a great question. Pour moi, c'est très important que je comprends bien que les députés ont leur propre rêve. Et leur rêve est d'être député. Et mon job comme chef, comme leader, est de vraiment bâtir les rêves de tous les députés. So the question was if I had conversations with any of the MLAs about perhaps stepping aside or making a seat. And one of the things I want to be really clear about is that this is their dream. They are public servants. They have their own service. And their dream has been to serve the public in this way. I'm not the kind of person who would ever push anyone aside. And I want to make sure that I'm the kind of leader that allows every one of my colleagues to be better. I think I'm good. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Aaron from Ottawa.
All right.
In the last election, obviously, the difference of 1,000-some votes between government and opposition in Calgary. What happens to Calgarians? Is there going to be a renewed emphasis on to maybe flip those seats, and what do we see?
I mean, if you were going to do sort of very basic analysis, and you just looked at a table or a map of where I won 3 times in Calgary versus where the NDP needs to flip seats, well, we'd have an NDP majority government. But you know what? That's not really how this works. We have to re-win every single vote in every single community. And you know, one of the things I've been a little bit critical of is that the path to victory in the last election for the NDP was very narrow. They basically had to win almost every seat in which they were competitive. And they just we need a much broader path going forward. So of course, Calgary is a critical part of it. But we also need to be viable in Lethbridge, in Red Deer, in Grand Prairie, in Fort McMurray, in smaller communities across the province. And so that's the work we got to do.
Yeah, on the issue of Bill 20, are we going to see that repealed as part of the NDP platform?
You know, when my friend Jason first became the premier, and in that first summer, he had this great zeal for the summer of repeal, which I thought was sort of tacky and not very kind and not very gracious. Here's the thing. I'm having trouble thinking about what we won't repeal because we got to rebuild the Alberta that is systematically being destroyed. And so for me, there's going to be a lot of work to do.
Next, we'll go to Emmanuel from CBC.
Radio-Canada. Allô?
Hello.
En français. Vous avez maintenant un caucus de 38 députés avec qui vous devez travailler. La plupart d'entre eux, vous les connaissez pas, ils vous connaissent pas. Comment vous envisagez ça?
J'ai connu peut-être la majorité des députés avant cette campagne. Mais pour moi, c'était merveilleux parce que j'avais l'occasion de rencontrer, de mieux connaître tous les députés. Et ils sont si intelligents, si passionnants. Et pour moi, j'ai une équipe magnifique et je suis très heureux de ça. Yeah.
Vous l'avez mentionné en anglais, mais le NPD a de la difficulté à se faire élire dans les régions rurales en Alberta, Fort McMurray, Peace, tout ça. C'est quoi votre stratégie?
Well, pour moi, il y aura une grande stratégie d'entendre tous les citoyens. Et pour moi, c'est difficile de dire des choses de rural Alberta. Parce que pour moi, il y a beaucoup de gens différents. À Red Deer, à Fort McMurray, ce n'est pas la même chose de consult ou Bonnyville ou légal. Et donc, pour moi, c'est une opportunité, une occasion d'entendre les citoyens, de mieux comprendre ce qu'ils veulent.
So we're going to go to one more question in person. Just a reminder for those on Zoom to use the *9 function, or the phones use *9.
forgot we had phones.
And for those on Zoom to use the raise hand.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Sean Polzer. I'm from Western Standard.
Hi, Sean.
I know that the NDP doesn't talk to us. So,
I talk to anybody.
would you
Yeah, you
answer a
ask. No, go
question
ahead. Go
for
ahead and
my
ask
kid?
a question.
No, I
Oh,
want my
is
kid.
this your daughter?
Yeah.
Hey, come on
And
in.
she's going to be old enough to vote. in 3
So good.
years.
And you're a Girl Guide.
And she's
Outstanding.
She's and a volunteer at the zoo.
So good. What's your name?
Serena.
Serena, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please go ahead.
The UCP has put a lot of policies on schools recently.
Yes.
Notably their phone policy. So I ask this as a young person, how are you going to make Alberta's youth a priority?
What a great question. Thank you. Alberta's youth have to be the priority. And so I'm really concerned right now about the stories I hear, both from young people, from students, and from teachers and faculty about what's really going on in schools today. From a curriculum rollout that was very badly botched for people in grades K to 6, to high school students who are really concerned about ensuring that their schools remain safe for all of their classmates, regardless of how different they might be. And I worry a lot about your classes getting bigger and bigger and bigger with more. You know, I grew up in a very poor family, and everything I have is because I had the opportunity to have a great public education. And right now, I really believe that although we still have a great system, we have a great system because the teachers and the education assistants and the others work so hard with no respect to make it happen. And it's just not fair. It's just not right. We need to resource our classrooms properly so that students see a better future. And the thing that worries me more than anything, what grade are you in? 11. So as people your age, grade 11, grade 12 students who are saying to me, you know what, I want to go away to university or to college or to learn a trade, and I'm not sure I want to come back. And that's never what we've been in Alberta, and I want to make sure that we are a place where people want to stay and where people want to go and they want to come back. So that's really my goal. And you know, let's let Dad ask a question too. Go ahead.
You know what? I just really want to thank you for that. I'm an energy reporter.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about Calgary being the energy center of Alberta. There's a lot of kind of seem to be I don't want to say under attack. But you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of bad press about the oil and gas sector in the city, and I don't think it's entirely deserved. What are your thoughts about the?
Oh, it's a terrific question. So you know, you can't be mayor of Calgary for 11 years without understanding the energy sector really well, and you probably will never see a more passionate advocate for the Canadian energy sector than me. You know, I'm looking out the window behind you at all these high rises, and I'm remembering how I ended up being on the front page of the intranet for one of the big oil companies for a long time because they were saying no one has made the case for pipelines as good as this guy, so let's use his language. And I did that a lot. You know, I spent time traveling across the whole country in French and in English, talking to people about the importance of Canadian energy and how it is the source of our prosperity. But I'll tell you something else, Sean, which is I believe that the Canadian energy sector is also the home of the most innovative people in the world on climate and on environment. I think the smartest people in the world on those issues want to work here precisely because the problems are the biggest. And so I think our government, sadly, is way behind our own energy sector. When I hear the Premier talk about electricity, for example, it's like nails on a chalkboard, because I know that the people investing in our electrical grid are way ahead of her. And I know that the energy sector in Canada chose a net zero by 2050 target long before the Conservative government did. But the problem is that by continually cutting them off at the knees when they're trying to invest in renewables, for example, or by putting all of our eggs in the basket of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, instead of in that and in all the other technologies, in harping that hydrogen cars are better than electric cars. Narrator, there are no hydrogen cars, right? It makes us look dumb. You know, we can't, it's not enough to say that the last barrel of oil burned should be an Alberta barrel in the world. We have to earn that. And we have to earn that as we do every day with a smart, sustainable energy sector. I believe, and I will believe to my dying breath, that supplying people with clean, safe, affordable energy is one of the strongest anti-poverty tools we've got. But we have to earn that. And the industry is ready to earn it, and they're looking for a government that's a partner, not a cheerleader. Thank you. All right, are we going to the phones?
No further questions.
Woohoo! Thank you all so much. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of you.